welcome to another episode of Planning Phase Syndicate. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Tonight is episode 9 on our epic journey through the universe. Tonight we have an episode called Never Tell Me the Odds. Tonight we're going to do a little bit different discussion. I wanted to have more of an open dialogue with the guys tonight because I think it is very important to discuss certain types of things as we keep going forward. So before we get too much farther down the road of trying to talk through some of what I would call the mechanics of the game, the intricacies, how things work together, I think it's a good discussion to have about points. And I really wanted to have a discussion about points values tonight, even though we don't technically know what goes into the points values, AMG and FFG does. But what I think is really important is understanding how all of those work and how we can help kind of evaluate some of that between the two. We're also going to highlight certain types of things in our roll call, such as Fang Fighters, Delta Aether Sprites, Trade Federation drones, and X-Wings to kind of show some of the differences inside of what those points value are. And I'll give an example. Fang Fighters. Do you want 4 or do you want 5? What happens and what's the big difference when having that one extra Fang Fighter that we're not legally allowed to have? We are also going to do a system malfunction. I've put together 3 different medium token type ships that I want to talk through and some interactions with them that I think are some unique ones that a lot of people don't know about. They don't trigger all the time, but sometimes they do. And then if we have time, Matt's going to be doing another Construct the Death Star jank tank multi-faction style. But without further ado, let's bring our co-host in. Come on in, guys.
Hey!
There's Matt and there's Charles. So with me tonight is my co-hosts, Matt and Charles. How are you all doing tonight?
Doing good.
Tonight it's pretty amazing. I mean, I'm excited. It's a little cooler here in Michigan. Had a pretty good weekend. Last week we streamed, I think, 5 XTC games. We had one of our Patreons actually join us for some commentary. So hint, hint, hint. If we do streams and you want to become a Patreon at any level, we might be able to pull you in and kind of have you help commentate. And I learned how to play Armada this weekend.
Ooh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, so it was a pretty fun weekend overall. How about you, Matt?
Oh, very, very busy weekend, actually. We were out at a fair. My wife and I are starting a business, so we were there all day and had just a lot of work this weekend. But had a good week. We were pretty effective with our business, and we were able to build some new things. So it's been a great week. Did miss Armada, unfortunately, though. So sad panda.
And hopefully our next guest will have less technical difficulties. Thanks, Johnny. Charles, how about your weekend? How have you been?
I think I had a good weekend. I went to Legoland with a friend of mine who's visiting from Michigan and his son and my kid. We all went to Legoland. It was a lot of fun. I was tempted with both the UCS Star Destroyer and the UCS Falcon. If somebody out there wants to donate $1,500, I'll be happy to buy both of them, and then I will do a separate stream as part of our podcast of me putting them together in time lapse. That sounds absolutely terrible, but if somebody, you're more than welcome to do so. I did pick this up. I think it's really cool. It's a Lego bonsai tree that I thought was cool, but all in all, it was a good. Yeah, all in all, it was good. We got our picture taken with Lego Ray and Lego Chewbacca, so there was some good times there. Other than that, pretty laid back. Got to play a couple games of X-Wing over the weekend, so everything's good.
Well, that's awesome. Sounds like we all had an adventurous weekend. And I want to do 2 things real quick. I want to recap Armada, because again, as our show kind of focuses on less competitive play, more casual things, Armada was actually really fun to play. And if you're looking for something that's a little different than X-Wing, that's a little bit more strategy based, kind of like Stratego or something else, that actually is something that is hugely beneficial. And for example, the quality of what you have to do in terms of variability, like with dice rolling, is a lot lower because you only roll attack dice. You do not roll defense dice for anybody. So you don't have to worry about your green dice going blank, 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 kind of like we had on that stream where we watched Darth Vader roll, was it 4 or 5 green dice and just roll all blanks this weekend.
Way to just jab the knife in there. I think you got me right between the second and third ribs there, Chris. I appreciate that. I've tried Armada. It's not my style. It's more 3D chess, where X-Wing is kind of straightforward. It's not a bad game. I enjoyed the game. I learned from a mutual friend of ours, Phil, taught me how to play Armada, and it's just the whole trying to plan your turns 3 turns in advance, to try and figure out where things are going. My brain just doesn't extrapolate the data that far in advance. So while I did enjoy it and had a wonderful time playing it, it is definitely not my game style of choice personally.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I'm
As for the
fascinated.
XCC
Chess is
streams,
wonderful.
yeah, Matt likes chess. Matt and I play chess together on more than one occasion. And I'll tell you what, the one game I won't play with Matt is Monopoly, but I sure as hell will play chess with Matt all day, any day of the week. Usually we find X-Wing a little bit more fun, personally.
Yeah.
But
A lot more complexity, in my opinion. Sorry. Chess, for all the chess players out there, obviously chess is very complex, but not on the level I play. So,
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not very
yeah.
good at it.
I don't think any of us is the next Bobby Fischer. That's for sure.
no.
All right. As for the XCC games, you can check every one of those out on our YouTube page. You can also probably find them on Twitch. I think they're still up on Twitch. So we've done 5 games this week. I did one every single day, and depending on, so I have a conflict on Wednesday nights, and I may have a conflict on Tuesdays, but I'm looking to pick more XTC streams up this week as well. I got some confirmation from the guys on some schedules, and as they start rolling into the dashboard, I will start picking up some games. So I'm hoping by the end of tonight, I'll be able to announce some games that we have. As of right now, there's only one open game for next week, and I think somebody already took it. So with that being said, if you have not checked out the XCC, I think it's really important. It's a really fun thing that we can do. The one thing I don't want to spend a lot of time tonight on it is going through stats and things like that. That's not my forte per se. And I would rather you just kind of watch the streams for what they are. And if you have any comments or you want to join us, let us know. All right. So, guys, let's get into our Academy 101. So for Academy 101, tonight I want to talk about points. Points, points, and more points. And so you're going to ask me, what is a point? What is point cost, Chris? What are those? So the point costs essentially are what is printed, and I say that in parentheses because technically speaking, points costs are not printed on cards anymore. That's a 1.0 thing. But points costs are essentially the value of your upgrade, the value of a configuration, a modification, anything that you add onto the ship. And as we kind of discussed at the beginning of the episodes, you have a point value max that your ship's allowed to have. So for a standard game, it's 200 points, no matter what. So again, there's some variables, right, if you play different games. But we're going to stick right now just to the standard X-Wing game. Both Extended and Hyperspace offer 200 point max ships. The other limitation you have, right, is you can't have more than 8 ships, because I sure as heck would have 9 drones if I could, or even 10 drones if I was allowed to. But those are not you're not allowed to have more than 8 ships. So even if a ship only had costed 10 points, it really wouldn't matter because you can't have more than 8. That's it. So the points value of everything is determined based on different factors, right? So the initiative of the ship is one of them. The maneuverability of the ship, the piloting abilities on the ship, and the upgrade slots on the ship. Obviously, your chassis, how big it is a value as well. Did I miss anything else that kind of affects what the points could be?
Stat line.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
The
Stat line.
stat lines.
defense.
Pilot abilities.
You said that.
Anything else?
Um,
Force.
The fourth. Yep. But that's an upgrade card. So that's the different things that you can attach to that shit.
Yep. No, I think you covered it. You have initiative, pilot abilities.
Base size,
Um,
stat
yep,
line,
base size, stat line.
maneuverability. Yeah.
And something that we'll talk about later as well, but I think one of the things they look at when they build in points is what tilts the game. Earlier, you had mentioned as an example why 4 fangs and not 5, or why are we allowed 8 of this one ship, but we can only fit 2 or 3 of this other ship into a list, and what are those differences there? I'm sure there's some mathematical algorithm that determines when the ship falls, past its max efficiency and either into like broken levels of game destruction, or falling off, and that it doesn't really matter if you have more than that in there because it doesn't benefit you or hurt you in any way.
Yep. And it's kind of the same thing as like the health of your ship too, right? Like if you have a ship that's got 9 hull and 3 shield upgrades, I'm looking at you, boss. And you can probably not be one-shotted, right? You have to be worth more than a 3 health interceptor with no shields, right? But on the opposite side, your interceptor is a million times more maneuverable than Bosk is.
Well, yeah. I mean,
So
you're talking about 3 defense dice backed up by a small base and double reposition on an interceptor. I mean, they're not. I get what you're saying. Like apples oranges. Like 14 health on a VT decimator, right? Uh, but those things have 0 defense dice. So, it, I mean, yeah, everything is a hit. That's a hit. I mean, you're not going to be able to evade unless it's like a weird situation. But still, those things definitely take a account.
yep. So what I think would be beneficial, right? And so because when we're talking about points, and I can bring Yasby up if we want, or any of those things, but I think to begin with, right? What is you? And we'll start with Matt, and then we'll go to Charles. But what is your number one? Like what do you think is the most beneficial thing to ensure points are not too much or too little, right? So we all know the Nantexes, if you were around during the Nantex apocalypse, and we're not going to get into that, but we can touch on that in a minute. But so Matt, to you, what is the most important thing to ensure out of all those categories that we talked about? What is the most important thing you feel on a points level that needs to be managed more closely than the other parts?
Oh, what's the most important aspect you mean of the
Yes.
points?
Yeah. So
Not like I was gonna say, like lower doing lower changes when they do the changes in the points. Is that what you mean, or do you mean like what part of the ship is more important?
yes. So what
Incremental
is the
change.
most what is the most important part of what we would cost out for the point? So again,
Gotcha. Yeah, I think
Obi-Wan
that
and the Delta
I get what
Aether
you're
Strike.
saying. Um, so for me, a lot of times, depending on what you're looking for, I think the stat line to me is basically the hard and fast what is and what isn't going to cost you your points, right? So if you have a 3 attack dice and 3 agility, you can't have 9 hit points behind it, right? If you have 9 hit points behind that, that ship is going to take a long time to kill. It's a very powerful ship. Look at your defender, right? Your TIE defender has 4-3, right? Isn't that right, Chris? Four shields, 3
Yep.
hull. But look at the cost of that ship. Correctly costed, I think, in most cases. Though, I mean, I would probably be willing to take a few less points on that one, so you could actually put 3 on a team. I would actually allow that. I played against it. It's not actually game breaking, but to me, stat line is probably one of the most, if not the most important bit.
And what do you consider part of the stat line then? Like, so what is your
Mhm.
definition for the stat line when in terms of referencing X-wing only?
Red dice, green dice, shield, hull.
Thank you.
Fine.
All right, Charles, how about you?
I think for me, going away from ship points, but upgrade points, and it kind of applies to ships as well. And that is how a multiplier affects. And what I mean by that is, like, for instance, one of the cards that I'm glaring at and hoping that point cost goes up is Disciplined, which is the Imperial upgrade that allows you when a ship dies to take a target lock or reposition your ship. At 1 point, which is what it currently is, I believe it is a 1 point upgrade. Um, Putting that on 6 ships is not a big deal. But if you increase it to a 2 point upgrade, while that 1 point doesn't seem like such a huge jump, when you're applying it to, say, a striker swarm, or you're applying it to an interceptor swarm, it can really affect the way how many of them you're willing to use, where you're putting it strategically, and that sort of thing. And it's the same with ships. Um, when you have like to piggyback on what Matt said, when you have a small base ship that has 3 green dice but only has 3 health, like an interceptor, or you have a large base ship that has 3 green dice, like the aggressor assault fighter that Scum gets. The stat line is 3 red, 3 green, 5 hull, 3 shield. I mean, that's a beefy ship to still have 3 green dice. But when you look at how they're costed out point wise, the aggressor sits at 60 points each. So if you're going to try and fit 3 of them on a list, you don't have a lot of room for upgrades. So you better hope that you're picking the pilot abilities that best complement you. Or in 1.0, and I've seen it a little bit in 2.0, but it's not a huge thing right now. The Brobots, having 2 of the aggressors. They play better in pairs than they do in tries, just because you have a little bit more functionality with upgrades.
I have
So
seen
for
some acts of that actually, Charles. There have been some robots
sure.
played out there.
Oh, absolutely, but it's not as prevalent now as it was in 1.0. There's far more options now. But for me, I think one of the largest things that we should look at when we're calculating points cost is, in multiples, is it game breaking? And if it is game breaking or play experience breaking, is it so bad that we need to increase the points? Like, say, with Nantexes, you were mentioning, we used to be able to fit 6 Nantex into a list and just run them down somebody's throat. You didn't care if you bumped, you didn't care what you did, because of the action economy that they got. And they saw that, and a simple increase of 1 or 2 points made it to where you could no longer fit 6 of them comfortably on a list. You could only do 5 or 4 if you wanted an upgrade line. So I think the multiplication of any upgrade on a list, or any ship on a list style wise, for me, is probably one of the most important things to look at.
You're talking about essentially spamability. And
Yeah,
we
there you
can
go.
say spamability. How much can I spam it, and how does it affect everything? And you're
Absolutely.
right, like the discipline, everybody that is not stressed can take a target lock or do a barrel roll, right? Can you imagine in CIS what that would do? I mean, that would break CIS, because think about my droids. All of a sudden I can now barrel roll. Because by the way, a droid can barrel roll from a rock to another rock. And as long as their wings are open, or they're not wings, but whatever they call them, their struts are open, they don't take damage and they can still shoot.
And I think,
So
to
it'd be
piggyback on
crazy.
that, that's another important factor to look at, especially with upgrades, is, do they give a ship the ability to do something that it innately does not? For instance, looking at TIE interceptors, the one thing that they cannot do on their action bar is target locking. You put Disciplined on, and now you have interceptors that have the ability to take a target lock action, which innately is not something they can do.
Yeah.
Or looking at like Protectorate Gleb. That is a huge one right now,
Yep.
because he can go on any ship that has a crew slot, and ships that previously did not have the ability to have a coordinate action now have the ability to have a coordinate action, and the ability to pass off the stress from doing the
Right.
coordinate action.
It's like a
So
pseudo
there's
white
Torkoal
coordinate,
Mux.
right?
Torkoal Mux. Sorry.
or any of
Yeah,
the
it can go on
Hawks.
Torkoal Mux. You're right. Yeah, make Torkoal Mux even better. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to do because he's so good already, but
Exactly, like the king of the game,
the Ace of
and should
Legend,
always be
just
flown
nobody ever
against
talks
Chris.
about him.
But
Yeah, it's
so yeah,
weird.
so for you it's spamability, right? In my world, I think one of the biggest things is not spamability as much, though I do agree with you. I think that's a huge one, you know. And again, you can look at vultures. If vultures can put struts on for 1 point, or you don't have to. So it's a little bit different. And I like some of like when they put the independent calculates out there and they said either every Trade Federation drone has to take this specific card or nobody can take it. Or if you only run one, then it doesn't matter. And so like for me, the independent calculate would be broken if you could run it just one card on one or two of your drones, right? So I could keep all the network calculates for anything that runs discords and energy shells, and then run two of them with independent calculates along the sides as like a pincer move, right? So you either go after my pincers or you go in the middle, and one of the two is you're gonna get screwed one of the two ways. So for me, the bigger thing is the interactions, the multiple interactions, and how they affect each of the different cards. So again, for me, the independent calculates would be one that I would say, hey, you would never want to be able to have it only on one or two ships. You should have to take it on every ship. Should it be 4 points? Probably not, in my opinion, because it's not very impactful. But again, that's a little bit farther down the discussion line. For me, though, the big impactful thing is how does it trigger other cards? And if you can trigger a bunch of other cards and trigger all these other things that benefit those ships or that list, the multiple interactions, to me, that's the bigger thing where you have to adjust and ensure your points cost. And that goes back to Nantexes, right? Let's go all the way back to a Nantex. And the Nantex, and maybe, I don't know, should we bring the Nantex up? Charles, do you want to bring it up
I got you.
on the thing? And I'm going to flip screens. Why don't we do that?
Crazy Nantex, blah, 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 blah.
All right.
So I did see
So-
somebody ran a 5-pack of them.
They did. We don't want to talk about that though. Let's not encourage anybody to run these damn things. All right. So what happens with the Nantex, and this is what I'm talking about because of the abilities that trigger multiply and have a huge enhancement. So what happens is after you acquire or after you move, you may acquire one tractor token to perform a rotate action. Now, the negative downfall, right, is you take a tractor token, you're losing one of your green dice. They give them 3, you now only get 2. You have no shields. It is 100% all hull. But because it does not say after you fully execute a maneuver and it's just execute a maneuver, I can run into you and barrel roll to still get a shot because I have to rotate my mobile arc. Now, on a positive side, you cannot rotate it to the butt of that ship. It has to be left, middle, or right. But here's where this card became ultra powerful when the cost of this pilot was lower. And again, by itself, one Nantex by itself that can do that is really not that impactful to the meta. But when you can all of a sudden fit 6 of them and every one of them can bump into you and barrel roll away from you and still shoot you, you now create a long-term effect that allows for ships that normally would not get to shoot, that now can, every one of them can run into you and shoot you. Now, they're not going to get mods, right?
Well, actually, that was the problem, Chris. That was the problem that they ran into is with that, they were able to carry marksmanship and, was it Predator? Oh, either way, they got, I think it was Predator, right? Predator, and they got crack
Yeah,
Crack
shot.
because
shot.
they have
Right.
2 slots. Yeah.
So Predator is a soft reroll mod, and then crack shot is also a multiplier too. So
But if you're
it's
but if you run into a ship, you're not getting a modifier. And if you run into a ship and barrel roll and you're not in bullseye, and we could bring this up in TTS if you want, but no matter where you hit, you have to land in a very precise spot to be able to barrel or to be able to move, to rotate the arc, to be able to shoot with that bullseye shot. The bigger impact is I could run into that ship and barrel roll forward left, barrel roll forward right, run into it again, barrel roll left back and right back, and then all 4 of those would have shots on one ship, and they would all be able to have their arcs pointed. They would all be at range 1. Whereas normally when I start running into things, I'm now not getting such the action economy.
The other thing though that was really working in its benefit was when you bumped into somebody, because you would normally fly them as a swarm, you barrel roll that ship out of the way, giving it its range 1 shot, and then the guy that was behind him that would have bumped into him comes in to take the spot where he was, not bumping your opponent's ship and being able to get mods. So
Yep.
when you ran 6, 7, 8 of them in a grouping, you'd have 3 or 4 that didn't have mods, but you'd have 4 or 5 of them that did have mods, and they're all range 1 shots. And 3 dice at range 1, it's death by 1,000 cuts, man.
Yes. And so if we want to bring it all back to where I feel the biggest points impact is all of the multiple triggerings and how they all happen. Because for me, that's the bigger impact in the world of, how things interact. Because I think like, especially if you look at the legacy sets, right? And that's what I call our Scum, Rebels, and Empire, because they have so many more ships in Extended than some of the other factions do. And they have a higher probability of having broken combos. And I want to give a quick example here, right? In Star Wars Destiny, which is a defunct card game now, which I love and you should all go play at some point. And if you want to play against me, I'll be happy to play against you. We'll stream it. Anyway, the idea though behind Star Wars Destiny is you had so many, you got 100 to 200 cards per set. A set was released twice a year at minimum. They were supposed to be 3 times a year, but what they did is they created rotation so that way whatever was being able to play for the staple was only 6 sets to 4 sets, and that's it. Because some of the older cards, as they learn how to create new mechanics, would start breaking some of these older cards. And it would be like for example, there was a card that cost 3, and back in the day, you to pay the 3 took like 3 dice to get 3 resources, and it was a pain in the butt to play this card. But once you created an economy that generated, let's say Jabba, for example, Jabba could get 6 resources in a round if he was lucky, right? There was another guy. What's the guy that Anakin has to get sold from? That they buy him from. I can't remember that. Watto. Yes. Watto had an action where you could do once a round, roll his dice, and if his dice both showed the same symbol, you got 2 resources each. Plus, he had 50% die that had resource symbols. So you had 250% chance. So you were at like 43.5% chance you were going to get these 2 extra resources. Plus, then you resolve the dies. So then all of a sudden, this card that says, and this is what this card says, spot, you're in the action round after this churn. So if you could play that, if you could roll your guys out, attack, resolve as many dice as you can, your opponent then is trying to play cards or roll out. You play this card and you end the round and say, "Hey, I just ended your round. Sorry, sucks to be you. Let's reset and go to the next round." That card would have been broken as hell if they had allowed that to come to the higher resource meta. They just would. So those long-term combos are where, in my opinion, X-Wing has to be better, or maybe not be better, but actually has to maintain that point level, because otherwise we are going to get some weird broken, crap that will have to be eroded.
So throwing it back, I'll take it back to 1.0 to kind of trigger on this, but staying within the X-Wing vein. In 1.0, there was a card called Accuracy Corrector. What Accuracy Corrector did was when you rolled your dice, you could, after resolve and after you rolled red dice, you could cancel all of your die results and then add 2 hits. So no matter what you rolled, you could cancel your dice and add 2 hits. And then when you put auto blasters with that, auto blasters allowed you to cancel crits before hits. So if you could throw crits or something of that nature, or for instance with TLT, if you had TLT, you rolled 3 red dice, and then you would cancel all dice results and deal 1 damage. So if you had TLT with Accuracy Corrector, you were throwing 2 hits on every single attack, forcing your opponent to always, have to roll 2 or better. So if you were flying the Decimator or you were flying, something of that nature that had minimal green dice, those abilities would trigger. Or even in the current staple meta that we're seeing now, Auto Blasters again is appearing with any cards that allow you to convert hits to crits, like Marksmanship or Greedo or anything that allows you to force a hit into a crit, and then being able to push that crit through. Another card that comes to mind in that case is like Darth Vader Crew, being able to force damage through without dice rolls. Uh, Being able to just say, oh, you have an ace that has 16 green dice at range 3 through a rock. That's great. Vader's still going to go ahead and push damage through, and you're going to take it whether you like it or not, because that's just how this works. You know what I mean? Like there are card combos like that that allow you to force it through. Luckily, with a lot of those card combos are involving a unique card like that Vader Crew. So there is no spamability. You're only having, the one that you have to deal with. And if you can drop the ship that has that, then you're okay. You know what I mean? But that being said, Vader in 1.0 was much stronger than Vader in 2.0 because Vader in 1.0 didn't have to rely on the Force to make it happen. It just happened, whether you liked it or not. Having Vader on the Decimator was those cards were almost stapled together because it just went with it.
Yeah. And I think, what does this all bring us back to, right? We all come back to the discussion of, why do points matter? And points matter because we don't want a broken game or a negative play experience, for example, right? Nantex, when we played them, when they were really cheap and you could run 6 of them, created a very big negative play experience because there was almost nothing that took them off the table. Now, I want to caveat some of these things a little bit because I agree and disagree on the negative play experience with Nantex. I think they create that, but at the exact same time, people were only doing them for tournaments. How many people went to a local and ran 6 Nantex? Like I didn't. I only own 3, I think. I own 3.
COVID times too. Nobody was
Yeah.
running them in person at all. So,
And that's true too. And so you have to look at all of those things, but ultimately points are designed to create or to keep away negative play experience because of the fact that, again, if I ran 10 drones at 3 health each, I've got 30 points. You've got 10 ships to take off the board. And if you would have to, if you ran 3 ships, that's going to take you 3 churns of me not getting any evades and you hitting me with 3 hits. The probability of that is here. It's here, very small. And Matt can attest to that because I run droids quite a bit. And if I could run 10 of them and then I can outmaneuver, I'm getting 10 shots. So even if you write 3 off the board, there's still 7 there that are going to hit you if they have shots, right? If you outmaneuver them, it'd be a little different, which they can be, but you can I could set up bubbles. It's kind of the same way as like the Wookiee ship. You can set bubbles up and you can create that. Bosk has a 180 arc. You can run Bosk left, middle, center. Yeah, you're going to hit asteroids, but you can run them like that and you can cover almost the whole board pretty much.
well, and that
I'm not
is
100%
one thing
sure
we
we'd
didn't
have to
talk about when we talked about things that affect points is the number of the firing arcs.
Oh, yep, there you go. And that's another one. The number of firing arcs affects your point costs. So again, when our goal is to not deal with negative play experiences, and for us, especially our podcast, that's a big thing. Charles has been playing for a long time, even through the negative play experience, which I heard was 1.0. He's still here, and so is a lot of people. Matt and I we don't have that experience. We're 2.0 babies. Like we've been around a year and a half. That's it. But
You don't
in
get the
our
bad
worlds,
flashbacks.
yeah, in our worlds, the negative play experience is pretty, like, it's right there because we are newer players learning some of the weird, more advanced techniques that people use. And I could tell you, the first time you run against something that you don't understand how it runs, you immediately feel that it's broken. Now, the more you play against it, and the more you're able to defeat it to some extent with different lists, the less broken it feels. And I will admit, I harp on Torkel Mux all the time. Torkel Mux is only borderline a negative play experience. He is, in truth, does not have enough other people around him to make the whole time a negative play experience. There is like, what are you going to do against my I1s? Yep. Hey, Torkel Mux, come here. I got all I1s. What are you gonna put them at 0? Oh no, one of my I1s can't shoot. Are you gonna take that one on the board first? I'm still gonna shoot you with my Discord missile. I don't care. you know.
Right.
So as much as I harp on Turkle Mux as it's more of my, and maybe that should be a command we put. I'm gonna build that command, and there's gonna be some rewards. So anybody listening to this, if you listen to this live, exclamation point Torkel Mux, and it's not set up yet. I'm going to create that bot command, and we're going to do something for it. I don't know what it's going to be. Something that'll drive me nuts, I'm sure.
Yes, I'm in
every
for
time
this.
you mention it. Yeah, it's like a drinking game.
Like the magic word from old Pee Wee's Playhouse. We all have.
Mhm.
Turkle box.
Yep. If somebody's got to put it in the chat though, and it cannot be either of you. I am going to actually ban your 2 users from being able to use this command, so that way we can't have a stream where you're like, Chris won't shut up. So I'm going to put pound Torkel Mux, and it's going to be like, oh no, Tanner went off on a rant.
Yeah, I've
You know,
never
something
been
stupid
able
like
to
that.
make a second Twitch account. I've never been able to do that.
Well, I think that one of the major things that's happened since COVID as well, that really drives a lot of the meta decisions that we have right now, is the fact that you don't have to physically own a ship in order to play it.
Right.
I can jump in and play an Imperialist. I can go run 8 TIE FOs if I want to. 8 TIE FOs.
It's fun.
Anyway, no, it's not.
Yeah,
It's
Pocho was
horrible.
nice.
Like
But I can run them even though I don't physically own them. When I go to my Wednesday night leagues here in Orlando, I can't run them because I don't physically own them. So it's just one of those things where, like, for me, I'm only able to physically at the table run what I own. There are no proxies. There's no virtual like ship generator or card generator. So if I don't own 6 copies of thermal detonators with 12 sets of tokens to be able to drop them on the board, I can't run that. You know what I mean? So it's a situation where we run into form over function, in table versus the virtual environment. Because in the virtual environment, I can create what I need out of thin air.
Right. Well, and this also does, I'm going to quickly put this in here too, because he's not necessarily advocating to you going out and purchasing 8 TIE FOs. That is not necessarily what he's saying. He said he has a league
It's
on
fun.
Wednesday night. Well, guess what? It's a league night. Ask some of your league mates, hey, do you guys have any FOs? Can I borrow some FOs? If you'd like to try something on the board and you play at a thing, do ask and see if maybe some of your friends, or get it on a text chain. Just ask and see if you can borrow some of those ships. Not necessarily is it go out and buy 8 of this or 6 of that.
I
or 7
don't
of this.
advocate for 8 FOs on any level. Don't ask your friends. This is not something that you need to get into.
all right, we know
if-
what triggers Charles.
FOs are a decent ship.
If you play Focho, we need to have an intervention. Just
All right,
saying.
so
Play
on the
8
next
TIE
Nickel
LNs,
City
you need an
ladder,
intervention.
I'm gonna message Catherine and request that she allow only I1 generic ships to be played, and you're getting a vote show. No
fine, you'll get-
upgrades. I'm
That's
gonna
fine. You'll
request
get
that she,
you'll
request-
get 8 M3As.
which is fine. I'm okay with that as long as you can't have auto blasters or any of your other broken shit. I just run them naked ships.
I wonder if I could fit something onto 8 M3As.
M3As. I don't know. They're solid. They're definitely a solid ship.
But anyway, we're digressing. We just
We're-
we found Charles Trigger.
Woo! We're spiraling down.
All right, so let's go back. So one of the things, and this is a new 2.0 thing that has shown up, right? And I think this is an important thing to talk about because you get modifiers, right? And this is a huge points thing that has to be micromanaged as well. But you get modifiers. So you have 2 different things that give you more than one modifier because you only get one action normally. One is dual action or linked action is what they technically call it, ships. And the other one is force because force is extremely important. And I will again I'm going to pick on separatists because that's my bread and butter. When I first started flying separatists, I never once flew Count Dooku as a crew card very often. I tried it on Darth Maul, hated it, couldn't get it to trigger very often. And all it came down to was the fact that I didn't understand how to actually run Count Dooku. So, in terms of meta, people did not play Count Dooku almost at all as a crew slot because Separatists didn't have very many ships. Then they released HMPs and the Slave One ship. What do they call that? I don't know what they call it. Fire
It's
spray.
the primary indentured servant, sir. We're no longer referring to it as slave one.
All
Oh,
right.
stop it.
Anyway, we're gonna not political. Remember, we're not gonna get
Not
into the
political.
politics. We're moving past that.
Mhm.
The but you know, until you got crew carriers, you didn't see it because I mean, who did you run? What did you run? You ran a Sith infiltrator. Well, you can burn that down. It is Sith infiltrator is not Bosk in any way, shape, or form. Oh, and I think it costs more actually.
Oh,
So,
definitely does.
maybe we'll see a Sith infiltrator cost deduction because, or maybe we'll see Bosk go up. I don't know. Anyway, Force is a huge, huge thing, and I think we should touch a little bit on the Force modifier.
Well, for me, I mean, I don't. If you'd like me to touch on it, I guess the force multiplication
Matt,
factor
please
of
touch
force,
on it.
haha, is that force is always there, right? So you can grab a lock of you can barrel roll. It doesn't matter what action you take, you still have the ability to mod your dice. Ask anybody who's sitting and bumped at a ship how nice it is to have a focus token, right? You can go in and bump that ship as much as you want. If you have 3 force available, you pretty much have a focus token. You are not losing anything by being blocked or what it may happen to be where that ship is affected. Not to mention the fact that usually those force tokens give you another thing you can do. You talked about the Sith Infiltrator. What's Darth Maul's ability on the Sith Infiltrator? But he can use the Force not just to modify his shots, but he can also use it to double tap. Right? There is inherent value, not just in the Force, but also the factor that the Force adds to the ship itself. So for me, Force is just I'm sure they have some sort of point calculation on it, but that is a huge, huge addition.
Yep. Charles, what are your thoughts on the Force? Do you wish you had more of it in Scum?
So yes, I do, honestly, but not because we need it, just because I'm jealous and I want more toys. Um,
Oh my god.
like,
All right.
if I'm being honest, I want more. I want more broken scum combos that we could use. I mean, we all saw what force can do when you put it on a fire spray. We still see what force can do when you put it on a fire spray. Um, I mean, to be fair, it's a calculate, right? It allows you to change one die. You can use it on abilities. It's a renewable resource, so it's not not a permanent thing. If you can drain it off of people, it's not a god thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make somebody ungodly powerful. It's another resource that you have to manage. I do wish Scum had a couple more options, because right now the only option we have is Asajj. We just got it's Kanan Jarrus in the Hawk. So that is our second force using pilot, period. We've had a couple of crew like Maul. Luckily, we were able to get Maul on the Scum side of things. But on the by and large, there's not a whole lot of force, and I think it's okay that it's not in Scum. We have enough BS with our pilots and our illicit upgrades and all of the jank stuff that we get, Scum jank. I don't think we need force. It'd be nice, but just off the top of my head, I don't know. Like maybe Aura Singh or something like that, but I don't know. For force, I think that having it limited to certain factions is okay. as long as those factions don't get like. Hopefully, we never see Republic with access to illicit upgrades, because then you have Force and illicit upgrades, and then that becomes pretty crazy.
Well, I don't know. I think that properly costed, there's no reason why Scum couldn't have more Force users, really. And I also think that properly costed and properly managed ships, like none of the ships that are out currently, but nothing saying that one of those Republic ships couldn't have an illicit slot. I think it's fine as long as you do manage that through points, which is, of course, what we're talking about. So,
Yep. And in my world, you're right, Charles. A force token is a calculate. Where it becomes more aggressive is when you can do something different with it. For example, Count Dooku. And here, why don't you bring the Count Dooku up, and we'll read it for everybody because
Do I have
Count
to?
Dooku.
Yep. Yes,
God,
because
I
Count
hate this
Dooku is my
card.
favorite crew upgrade.
Of course he is.
But yeah, as you were talking about it, Charles, yeah, I'm not trying to say it's like this unimposable or unpregnable fortress that is the Force. It's just, it definitely does add something every time, is all I'm trying to
Oh,
say.
absolutely. And I'm not saying it doesn't. We've all seen 3 Force Obi-Wan in the Ada 2 Actus, like look immortal as he
Okay.
can shake off damage. But the
Right.
minute you back him into a corner or you get him into a position where he has to use all of that force and he's only regaining 1 per round, all of a sudden that dwindles, because regaining 1 per round that you have to use to reposition it's not super overpowered.
Right.
When you have a ship like, say, Luke, who does get a force every time he's targeted,
Right.
like it can get a little borderline, but you can still kill Luke as long as you're able to, push through the damage even when he has the force availability.
2 defense
It
dice.
still relies on dice variants to be useful. Except for
And
Count Dooku, who
except for
doesn't care
Count
about dice
Dooku.
who doesn't care about dice variants at all.
That's right.
Well, which is very typical for Count Dooku. If you go through the shows, I mean, Count Dooku has defeated so many people. I mean, he bested Asajj, I don't know how many times. He bested who was it? Voss. Was it Quinlan Voss? Turned him, bested him, used him. Count Dooku lived all the way until Palpatine said, "Screw you, I don't want you to live anymore." But Count Dooku says before a ship at range 0 to 2 rolls attack or defense dice, if any of your force are if all of your force are active, you may spend 1 force and name a result. If that ship does not roll it, you immediately change that die to the result. So, for example, you have a ship flying over a rock, no shields, flies over, hits the rock, lands on it. You're like, oh shit, land on it. Normally, you just roll the dice. On a hit or crit, you take the damage. On a blank or eyeball, you get nothing. Dooku says, before you roll that, I'm going to call crit because I don't care. I'm that much of a dick. I'm just going to literally say crit. So you roll the dice. If you hit the crit, you're still taking a crit. If you don't hit the crit, you're definitely taking a crit. So it doesn't matter what you fucking roll. So like in those situations, I don't even roll the dice. I'm just like, all right, you want me to take a crit? I'm just going to take a crit. And people are like, well, you should really roll it. And I'm like, no, I don't care. I'm not going to
What's the
roll
point
something because you already told me what it is. Yeah. Like, we're going to move on and let's keep moving through the game because I know that crit's going to suck, whatever it is. And normally in my world, it's a direct hit. Every freaking time I get a direct hit. But that's just me complaining.
I think that where the real power for Dooku though lies is in 1.0 there was a card that did almost the exact same thing, which was the Palpatine crew that we had. You could call when you rolled dice and say evade, and if you didn't roll evade, you got evade. But it was only when you rolled dice. Where Dooku really kind of bends is I can control it when I roll dice, but I also can control it when you roll dice. And there's no limitation to it. It can be bombs, it can be rocks. One of the great uses I've seen for this is they'll roll 3 dice, and 2 of them will come up good, and they'll have a target lock. And so before they re-roll for that target lock, they'll spend Dooku and say crit. So
They
that
can't do that though. They actually
wait, what?
cannot do that. You cannot do it on any sort of reroll. It is only on the initial roll. They
Oh,
clarified
really?
that. Yep, they clarified that in FFG.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
update.
I
thought
didn't
that
know
was
that.
the case, yeah.
Okay, well then that
Yes.
makes it not so bad, but I've seen people up until that ruling where they would do that. They would just roll the 1 die and then spend Dooku, so to guarantee a crit on your reroll is ridiculous. But still, if you run over a bomb like a thermal and guarantee that someone's taking a crit late game, that could be the difference between, getting a weapons failure or a structural damage and not. So Dooku is key on some lists, and where Dooku really got fun for me was pairing him with auto blasters. Because you can Dooku a crit, and with marksmanship, you can change a hit to a crit and
Yeah,
push 2 crits through that can't be evaded.
that's
And
nice.
when you're shooting at a ship like, say, Soontir Fel or Fen Rao or Luke or Vader or any high tier ace ship that has high agility, being able to put 2 crits into that ship and say, I don't care what you roll. Your green dice mean nothing because these crits are going to hit you. It takes away the aciness of a 3 evade dice ship when all of a sudden it can't do anything to dodge.
Which is not something we have actually talked about here, though, too. And this is something that we really maybe want to touch on is force multiplication of these cards, right? You're talking about several things here that you've done it a couple times with the marksmanship and the auto blasters. Now it's Dooku and auto blast. Either way, there are card combinations that are force multipliers, right? So you have like R2D2 as a crew card where you can repair on Han Solo, where if you roll a hit, you have to expose a damage card. Okay, you get 2 rolls. You basically get a re-roll every time because it's Han Solo. So it force multiplies. It's a great card to begin with, but when you can kind of negate some of the negatives by having that Han Solo with it, it really does start to make these interactions really some of those like stronger things, these force multiplication things that come from these card interactions.
Yes. Nope. And I agree with you. I'm sorry. I agree. I muted myself on accident. I agree with you that it's the force multiplier, but I think that kind of goes to anything, right? And the last thing that we could touch on points before we actually get into some examples. So what I want to do is the last thing to touch on really is your um your soft modifiers with your maneuverability, which essentially is your double repositions, is essentially what it is, your linked actions. Charles, if you want to bring up a tie SF for me, that would be amazing. Get rid of Dooku. Nobody wants to see him but me. Um,
He's
I
pretty
love
good.
seeing
He's a
Dooku.
good card. He's a good card.
And I think we'll see him go up in points, personally. I do honestly think that he's going to go up in points. And maybe it is fair,
No,
right?
he
He
seems
goes,
like he's pretty well priced right now, honestly.
well, Palpatine's 14. And Palpatine, all he does with his force, can you bring up Emperor Palpatine and Separatist?
Oh, Palpatine's
Sure.
amazing, though. I like Palpatine.
All he
You get
can
a
do is
force back with him.
modify your other dice on other ships. So it's the same thing as Dooku, but he's 14 points, right? So when another friendly ship defends or performs an attack, you may spend 1 force to modify one of
Oh,
his dice as if it was your
okay.
own force
You're
spent.
talking about Emperor Palpatine. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I thought you were talking about Darth Sidious. Sorry, Darth Sidious and Senator Palpatine or whatever.
Not only that,
one
but
is
Emperor Palpatine takes 2 crew slots.
2 crew
Yeah.
slots. Yeah.
So he's
But
a
that
double
is
crew
a
slot.
very powerful. That's a very powerful force use, though, right?
So
It gives everybody that ability.
okay, you're right. So there's no range difference. But for 4 points less, you just get a range difference. And the huge difference, as Charles pointed out, is this card only affects you. It does not affect an opponent at all. So we have a Dooku card, and I don't know why I'm arguing against Dooku because I really like that card. But in fairness, Dooku, I think, is an underpointed. Is for what he does, he's underpointed. Get rid of the SF a minute and bring up. Can you bring up Maul crew? Let's bring up Maul crew because Maul crew's pretty big, and that was what everybody ran on Boba Fett and Scum for a long time.
Well,
This
because
one
it
said-
gave you a secondary mod that allowed you to fly Boba stupid, because you always had a way, and every time you took damage, it replenished, so you could just go nuts with Boba.
But Maul's different. But Maul's not that expensive either, though.
Maul's 10 points.
He's
I
10
disagree.
points.
That's not.
I mean,
that expensive, though.
Dooku's 10, I think, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
That's
But the
usually
thing
what-
is with Palp, though, and this is the thing, Palp can spend force to modify 1 dice as though that ship had spent force. That means you still have to roll a focus in order for
Right.
Palp to be able to change it. Dooku allows that if you roll a blank and you call hit, that blank becomes a hit. It's not spending a force in the way that the force was meant to be spent. It's spending a force to basically do what Qui-Gon Jinn does at the beginning of episode 1 and mod a dice roll to whatever it is that you need it to be, rather than only modding the focus.
Or like
An
Fen Rao at range 1 gets to change a blank to a hit. The same thing. But Fen Rao is how many bloody points, right?
81,
Blank to an
No.
something like
evade,
that.
you're talking about.
Is he
Fen
really
Rao?
81? No, he's not.
No.
No, he's in
The
his 60s.
one you're talking about with Fearless is
68.
pretty expensive.
68. Yeah,
Thank
he's
you. Okay.
68. Sorry.
71
kidding?
with
Oh,
But
he's
Fearless.
81.
that's still a pretty deep point for a small base ship. But um that being said, like another thing that's big in the meta right now, that kind of combines, what we're talking about with adding abilities that you normally don't get to take, or adding extra things that I think is undercosted, is this gentleman, or this lady, as it were,
Yeah, this
uh,
lady. Come on.
Zam Wessel, being able to take a
That one's undercosted.
a passive target lock, in addition to charging for a double tap. So not only do you get the target lock as a mod, you also get potential for a double tap. And when you look at any other crew that gives you a double tap, you look at Bistan, you look at
Right.
who else gives you a double tap? I know Bistan
Veteran tail
does.
gunner.
Veteran Tail
Han.
Gunner, Han. You look at any of those cards, none of them are 4 points. None of them. Not a single one of them are 4 points. And not a single one of them give you the ability to have a target lock action as a passive mod. Like
Yeah.
I was talking about this with another player friend of mine. You guys know John. I almost think that the target lock ability, the regaining a charge to get a target lock, is more powerful than the double tap.
Well, it can allow for double modded shots, really for only being shot at. It's very powerful in and of itself. Like
On
that,
Bosque it is.
just that ability is worth 4 points to me. Just
And if
grabbing
you
a lock if you get shot at is worth 4 points every day of the week.
And then you talk about card combos. If you pair that with false transponder codes, not only do I acquire the target lock, but I jam off whatever green token you're using. So if you decide to keep your focus through, like you roll 3 natural hits and you keep your focus, I take a target lock and then I jam that focus off of you for the return shot. Like those kind of things right there are where point costs go in. And that's why I think that in the next points update that ZAM will probably see, I would maybe 1 or 2 points added. A 6-point ZAM I think is still worth it, but then you've got to really factor in, what are you building with that, because you've got to lose 2
So
points somewhere else.
so what if I said we should modify points, and this creates a complexity level that I'm sure AMG is never going to want to do. I'll be honest, they'll never do this. But in my world, I would say, again, false transponder codes are only available in what, a couple of factions, really?
Anyone
really
that
are
has an
only
illicit, I think it's the fire spray and scum.
Okay. So in
No,
fairness,
you can
then,
get it in some of the other ones too.
but in fairness,
X-Wing.
ZAM can only be ran in Scum and Separatists. So in fairness to that, there's no real reason to do this. But I think sometimes you have to look at what is your points cost based on a faction, right? Because if ZAM was available in Empire, it would be a heck of a lot different than if it was available in Scum, because Empire doesn't have access to false transponder codes. But guess who does? Separatists and Scum. Both of them do. And I can tell you right now, when I run ZAM in Separatists, I 100% always run false transponder codes. Now, I will tell you, I'll be honest with you, the false transponder codes are a little bit less of a worry if you understand how to break them. Cutthroat, on the other hand, which is another stupid Scum's card that allows you to regenerate your tokens when things die. That, on the other hand, is a little bit more of an issue when it comes to being able to use ZAM with false transponder codes, because all of a sudden you're getting your false transponder codes back. In Separatists, you have no way to get it back. So if I'm running a Django ZAM list and all of a sudden I see guess who's coming in here? I got somebody coming in. Oh, guess what? They're going to come in and they're going to just take a target lock at range 3 every single time, and they're going to jam off my false transponder codes. They're going to do it every time. I do the tournament I just played in. They burned my false transponder codes as fast as they could.
Yep.
And
Now I will say there is CIS has a card that nobody else has access to that has its own level of the word I want to say. Well, you know what? You cursed already, so I'm going to let that happen. Its own level of bullshittery, and that's treacherous. What's that? It's not even my ship. Your ship is obstructing your shot, so I'm going to give your ship a strain to cancel a crit.
Right. Isn't that some crazy stuff?
And then when
right
your
there?
ship blows up, I'm going to do it again. And again, and again, and again, and again, and again.
If we go back to how often things trigger versus a point cost, I can tell you right now, treacherous triggers almost never. And I'll be honest, Cutthroat really has not been a big staple either. Cutthroat does not trigger very often compared to what it could have. When we first read the card, you and I were super excited for Cutthroat. We thought that was going to be like game breaking. How can we use this on Tell? You know, all these other things. And I know everybody's like, can you bring Tell up? I guess you got to bring Tell up now. I mentioned Tell. But
The real class ability that's really bad is the discipline. I'm sorry.
yes.
Yeah,
And
discipline compared to like hopeful or any of the other ones that we've got, disciplined is so much better.
And
Yeah.
heroic too. There's the other one that's kind of a little bit borderline. They've already started changing the points cost on heroic. And even then that doesn't happen all that often. But disciplined, to me, I'm expecting to see at least a 1 point, if not a 2 point, increase there.
Discipline is a little bit different, but Terravera allows you to essentially spend one of your energy, which you only have one, to regenerate your life. You basically come back with health, so you don't die after somebody kills you. So after they spend 9 hit points, you get to come back. Now you don't come back full health, thank God.
1 hit point.
But
And any
with
whole upgrade.
Cutthroat, once you die, because it's 0 to 3, you regenerate that. So anybody that kills you will never kill you with that card on you. Period. It does not matter. Like because if somebody kills any of the other ships, you get to regenerate it. If they kill you, you don't get to regenerate it, but you get to spend it. So just having that card on Tell for 1 point, if you can get Tell to work in a list, which that's the key, is Tell's
There's the
points
trick.
are more than they probably should be per se, right? Because they don't he does not work in a list in the same way.
She.
In this she. Is it she, really?
Yes,
All right.
Dengar's wife.
Teltravera, yeah.
Did not know that. Thank you for Star Wars lore. Anyway, so she is able to come back more times, than is necessary, but she's so point costed out of the realm. You don't fly her because she all she is a point fortress. That's all she is a point fortress. That's it.
I apologize. I gave wrong information. I apologize for all the lore nerds out there. I don't know if anywhere in the chat. Teltavera is a man. I was thinking of Manaru.
Okay.
I apologize.
All
I
right.
thought it was a. Wow. Never mind.
Nope.
Anyway, all right, you can get rid of those ships. So when we talk about points costs, and this is why I wanted to have this discussion, because as we move into the next segment, I think it's very important to understand how points affect things, where they are at, why they are extremely important to negative play experience. Because in the long run, everything we talked about is to avoid a negative play experience for other players. Now, if you're newer, you're probably going to have a negative play experience playing against some of the lists anyway. And hence, that's why, in my opinion, and I'm going to go back to this and I'll preach it. I like hyperspace. I like hyperspace a lot. And I like hyperspace because it levels some of the playing field for the players. But that's just my opinion. With that being said, why don't we move on to our roll call segment? So for the roll call today, and all that's what I should probably bring up. Let's bring up Discord. Did we bring up Discord? Not Discord. We're going to bring up, my God, it's been a long day. We're going to bring up Yasby. And essentially, what we're gonna do is let's build the YASB list and kind of go from there on what we had talked about, right? Is that fair?
Yeah.
So, what do we want to start with? Out of all the ones that I put in there, what is the one that we want to start with?
Um, I don't know. It's a hard one to do. We can do the difference between delta delta B and the CLT variant of the Aether sprites if you'd like. That
Okay.
one's kind of interesting because that basically does a stat line change.
All right, let's do that. So, let's bring it up. And I bet you it's going to be a pooper and a half today. Yep. There's something wrong with my system again. Charles, you just want to bring a Delta Aether sprite up. There you go. That's what we'll do.
You just want me to do it in the
Yep.
overlay?
Yep.
Am I bringing up the ship or the upgrade?
Go ahead and bring the ship up first. Just bring a Jedi Knight up.
Maybe
All right, that's not a Jedi Knight, but that's
too,
fine.
just in case.
What's that?
You might want to bring up both upgrades as well.
Yep. Yeah, and then you can go ahead and bring the CLT, and you can bring up the thing is I'll probably have to readjust the size of the image. So a Delta Knight. Oh my god, a Jedi Knight with essentially is a 3 hull, 1 shield Jedi. They get 2 attack dice and 3 evade dice. 3 dice, obviously, at range 1. They don't have any super fancy thing other than fine-tuned controls, which basically says after you fully execute a maneuver, you may spend 1 force to perform a boost or barrel roll action. So essentially what you're doing is before you take your action, you're spending a force. Now, that Jedi Knight only has 1 force. I know he has Obi-Wan on the screen, but Jedi Knights only have 1 force. They do not have 3. Obi-Wan also costs, I don't know, what, 20 points more?
I think so, yeah.
So you get, for 2 more force, it's 20 points more plus his ability. So it's pretty big. The CLT says while you perform a primary attack, so not any sort of missiles or anything else, if the defender is in your bullseye, you add a focus result. Now, that tells you a couple different things. You have to always take a target lock or a focus or not spend your force. One of the two. One of the 3. Because if it's just adding that focus result. So you roll, let's say you roll you're in bullseye, you roll 2 focus tokens because you're at range 2. Then what happens is you get to add that other focus result. If you don't have a force or a focus token or a target lock, it's inconsequential. It does nothing. And Matt, do you know how much that calibrated? I think that thing is based, it's like 3 points or something like that.
So
Yeah.
it goes on initiative. I think it's anywhere from 2 to 6. It's not many. It's actually pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
It's not
And so it
necessarily
is-
an auto include, but it is definitely worth considering including at least the CLT on any of the Aether sprites you take.
Yep. So it is point cost is based on initiative. It is for 0 and 1, it's no points. For 2,
no 0 and 1s.
Yep. For 2, it's worth 1. For 3, it's worth 2. For 4, it's worth 3. For 5, it's worth 4, and for 6, it's worth. So the most it's worth is 5 points, and it is that way because if you don't take if you don't have a focus and you do have your force and you roll eyeballs, you add another eyeball, you still only changing one of the damn things. You ain't changing all of them, so it doesn't matter. Now let's move over to and it only triggers in bullseye, so you have to get bullseyes. Now I will tell you, I like running 5 Jedi with CLT. It is fun. I enjoy it quite a bit. Matt hates it when I run that. Matt does not like
Not the worst. It's not the worst. That's not the worst. So, but as you're talking about it, and I do want to kind of throw a stat line comparison up, guys. So, when you're talking about 2, 3, 1, and 3, you're looking at an M3A interceptor. is a similar one. It's basically a TIFO, uh, which again, TIFOs are 25 points. M3A, I think a base M3A is only
Like
about that
26 or
same.
28.
Yeah, I'd say it's not too much, but um, compared to a baseline Jedi Knight, the difference is that Jedi Knight gets that soft focus, the Force reposition, right? So you see the difference there, though, in the Delta 7, where the Force and that maneuverability actually are translated into points there. So that kind of is a good example of how it's done and why it's done there. So,
Yep.
anyways, just want to mention.
No, and that's actually really good, Matt, because they come in with that CLT as a Jedi Knight at 39 points, right? They come in at 39 points, so they are quite a bit more than an M3A. But I'll tell you what, the dial maneuverability on that thing is insanely better
Right.
than a M3A, and the fact that you get the second reposition is so much better. So it should be worth more points. 100% should be worth more points. And
It's
I
a
will
way
tell
better
you,
ship too.
running 5 of those with CLT on them is fun. It's not meta breaking. You can easily wipe them off because they only got one shield, and they're an I3. You know, so there's a lot of different things that go into that, right? Now,
It's solid. It just is. It is solid, but it is definitely beatable. That's the other thing too. Like Chris talks about, yeah, it's a little annoying, but at the same time, it's the 3 agility. It's not the fact that it's a Jedi Knight. It's not the fact that the ship is like the most maneuverable thing in the world or anything like that. It's that 3 agility. That's where that really comes into effect, and that's where you start to see it. Again, a stat line thing. That 3 agility can be very, very strong.
yep. So now we now go to the Delta 7B. The Delta 7B does a couple of different things. It gives you +2 shields, but it removes one of your green dice. So instead of the 3 green dice that you normally get, it's like, you only get 1. But we're going to give you another attack dice. So what you do is you churn that Jedi Knight from a ship that is a little bit more defensive to basically an aggressive aggro ship. Now, here's where that comes into play, right? And it comes into play on higher initiative ships, and it comes into play with more force ships that have more force, excuse me. Because this Jedi Knight, they're getting just 1 force, which means you can use it to do your reposition, but then you're not going to get it as a modifier. But if you have somebody like Obi-Wan who has 3, now I've got 2 other modifiers. I only regenerate 1, but I'll tell you what, having those other 2 modifiers helps me do so many other things when I need it. Now, here's the thing, and this is where I like that purple evade on there, because I never understood that until you put the Delta 7B on. So when we talk about probability and different things, right? One of the big probabilities is the fact that when I have 3 green dice, I naturally should roll 1 evade and 1 eyeball and 1 blank. That is my average. When I roll 2, my average is a lot less. You are not guaranteed an evade at that point, but you should probably roll an eyeball or an evade. So you should get one or the other on a 2-point ship or two agility ship. So the probability is a lot different. So in this instance, when you put this Delta 7B on, having those extra force or being able to get an evade that's a free token. I roll blank evade, got an evade, there you go. So you have to spend that force on it. So that's where that force, having that force spending ability changes that point cost. Because think if that was white, your action's going to always be probably to take that stupid evade. You're going to always take it. An 82 Actus, yes, exactly. Exactly right.
But like you were saying, though, if you do take that evade token, you're backed up with force, right? So he's taking you roll two blanks or blank focus. You have 2 force. You can do the evade with 1. You can use the focus with the other. So you give yourself that double modifier, kind of.
Yep. Now, the Delta 7B is costed insanely different than the other one. And this is where we talk about the initiative costing for it. So the point cost comes in for 0 and 1 at 4 points. It comes in at 8 for 2, 12 for 3, 16 for 4, 20 for 5, and 24 points for Initiative 6. An
Right.
Initiative 6. So an Anakin in this is like,
Tons of points.
holy crap, outrageously priced, in my opinion. Highly priced. But Anakin gets 3 force, right? I believe he gets 3 force.
Yep.
So he could spend 1 force on an evade every turn, plus have force to modify his attack dice. Now, it ain't going to last forever, but because he's a nice 6, he's going to be able to outmaneuver you if he goes last.
Reminds me a lot of Silencer Kylo Ren. But
Yeah,
at
the
I6.
what was the force ability that's stupid expensive?
You talk about Anakin's?
No, the force upgrade.
Supernatural.
Yeah, supernatural Kylo.
Yeah. That's
but
24
Supernatural
points on
Kylo's
Kylo.
way, yeah. That's a lot.
32 points on Kylo, actually. I
It's
think.
huge. It's very expensive.
No, it's 24 because he's an I5. 32
Yeah,
is
32
on
on Vader, but
Mhm.
nobody runs it on Vader.
Nobody
I
runs
would run it on Defender Vader.
I would say
but
very
that's
few
just me.
people run it on Kylo. So
Yeah.
Anyway,
I would run it on the Defender.
anyway. So when we're talking about the difference between 3 and 4 ships, right?
Mhm.
Can you imagine if you had 5 ships that all could run I3s that could all run Delta 3 or Delta Bs, 7Bs? You now got 2 extra shields. You are a double repositioning ship.
Mhm.
And plus you get an extra attack die. So what 3 dice, 2 agility ship that has that many things exists that has double reposition?
High
What?
Silencer.
But the silencer doesn't have force. Only one silencer has force. And that
Right,
guy's
but in order
76
to
points.
double reposition, there is no force.
Interceptors.
Interceptors,
no
but they have
force.
3 hull, no shields,
No
very
shield.
vulnerable ships.
The
You know who
closest,
comes to mind?
the closest
bring up-
equivalent is an X-wing. So
No, I was gonna
There you
say a different guy.
Oh,
I was gonna say a guy in a faction that I'm the only one in here that runs.
oh,
General
wow.
Grievous. General
He doesn't have any
Grievous has
force.
3 health, 2 shields, 2 green, 3 attack die, double reposition if he wants it to some extent. Not in the same way. He can't do a barrel roll boost, but he always will get a modifier, and he will always be able to either barrel roll or boost. And when he attacks you from behind, he gets soft mods of re-rolling 2 attack dice. like this guy. Think of having 5 General Grievuses flying. Now, Matt, would you want to fly against 5 General Grievuses?
I'm not. No, we're good. Nope.
Okay.
Or like 5 Luke Skywalkers. I get it. No, it's a bad day and nobody should have that. Fight against it. But FFG and AMG have decided you can't. So good.
We're all good there. Ugh. All right. The next one that I wanted to bring up was Fang Fighters, and this one's near and dear to Charles's heart.
Yeah,
This is
and-
not
and
the Fang
for
Fighter I was
those,
going to bring up,
for
Charles.
those
I
out
know
there-
you
It's
like
the only-
Finral.
It's the only Fang fighter that matters. I don't care what anybody says.
Mhm.
Okay,
I'm
well
just
then
kidding.
do we just cancel the segment on the Fang Fighter and move on? Because I mean,
No.
Fenral's
Fang
not the
Fighter's
one that you have to
amazing.
worry about. It's it's a 1, and it is a 4,
Zealous recruit.
and it is Skull Squadron.
The Skull Squadron.
If you can bring that
All
up
good
too.
ships. Very good ships. Pop easy at range 2 to 3. Engage at range if you're against a Fang Fighter.
Or from behind.
Oh, well, yes, or from behind, yes.
And I
again,
don't mean
preferably at
engage
range.
them from behind. I mean allow them to engage you from behind. So, like if you're in a fire spray, shoot out your rear arc. If you're in
Yeah.
any other ship, shoot out your side arc. And that way,
What if
even
you
a
don't have
range.
either of those?
Concordia doesn't work if that's the case.
Yep,
So,
Concordia
okay.
doesn't work if it's anywhere other than front arc.
Do you want to read Concordia, Charles? You should do
Sure.
that.
While you defend, if the attack range is 1 and you are in the defender's primary arc, change 1 result to a evade result. So that's a focus to an evade, that's a blank to an evade. If you're feeling froggy, that's an evade to an evade.
And then your opponent just looks at you and goes, "You're an idiot."
Yeah. You're
Yep,
not wrong.
So now the discussion, right, is so these I1s come in at 41 points. So the obvious answer to the reason they come in at 41 points is because you
Run
can't run
5.
5 of them. Now, this is where we talk about card text, right? The card text on this tells me if I'm at range 1 and in the attacker's arc, I get to change one of my results to an evade, right? Just like Charles said. If I'm behind them, I don't need the frickin' evade because it does nothing for me because they ain't shooting at me. And when they do shoot at me, I can. So now these ships are going to come in. They're going to have 3 agility. They are going to have the same thing as like a Grievous, right? They don't get the force, but they have a reposition modification linked action. So they're always guaranteed a focus. And when you have 3 green dice, you almost always take a focus token if you're wanting to be defensive, because that gives you the ability to focus your green dice, unless they're Charles's green dice, to evade. In Charles's world, he should always take a target lock because his Fang fighters always die every time for the most part. He has not good luck unless it's Fen Rao at range 1. And even then, Charles is only 50-50 on that. And it's funny, during the XCC stream, John and I were talking about that a little bit. So if you want to go back and listen to the
your
XCC
mathematical
stream,
statistics, but
Yeah, statistically, it should be better than that, guys.
statistically it should be, but if you're Charles, it's not. So we have to take Charles effect into this.
Right.
And John and I take the Charles effect all the time into
Right.
into the discussion.
I've
But
seen it.
anyway, so can you imagine being able to have 5 of these things that fly at you that always get three evade dice, and when they're at range 1, they're always getting a free evade for it. So they only technically ever have to roll 2. I can roll 3 and hit 2 evades and a focus. Never spend my focus token. Just get a free evade. No questions asked. We don't care. Here you go. Merry Christmas. So it's like they're a 2 dice green ship that always has a set aside evade at range 1. I will tell you, if the dial wasn't as maneuverable as it is, I would not actually be as scared of them. If the dial was like an M3A, would you honestly be that scared of them? Nah.
Well,
They're
the
a little
linked
bit more
action too,
punchy.
Chris.
Huh?
That's the other thing that sets that Fang Fighter apart. That's the other real strength to the Fang Fighter, which we kind of talked about and we haven't really talked about, backed up by the two hard blue, which you
Yep.
kind of were just kind of going over too there. You get the ability to either barrel roll or boost linked to a focus, which most ships do not give you that ability. Having that does give it that strength behind where it can maneuver or reposition into a place where you either can't shoot at it or to block or many different things, obviously, but it gives it that extra level of maneuverability, as well as that free, basically a free evade. So it's the same as you were talking about with the Jedi with the purple evade, right? You take in the evade and then you have the focus token, generally speaking, to modify the other dice. So it really does make them quite defensive at close range.
Yep. All right. Do we want to move on to the next one, or do you think this is covered
Probably
enough?
should.
All
Well,
right. You
I
want to
mean,
bring?
we should
Go ahead.
really quickly kind of talk about that. So not always, and like I said, was talking earlier about the TIE Defender. There are card like either things in the past or other things that made it is, but what they've decided to do is it's that 1 point threshold to make it impossible to run the 4s or 5s. It's not necessarily are they the strongest thing on the board or that they're always going to win or anything like that. None of these are actually saying that. It is that force multiplier of possibly having that many of them that makes it so strong. So that's where you kind of seeing some of that. So yeah, I just was kind of going to reinforce. Sorry, I know you probably said that, but still.
All right. What's the next one you all want to cover? Do we have any more?
do you want to cover your bread and butter there?
Yeah, we should do the drones. I think we can
And
skip
bread
the
and butter.
X-wings.
All right. So yeah, you want to take the Fang off the screen? Go ahead and bring up our CSI.
Never crush them with the fangs.
Was it the blah blah blah?
Trade
No,
Federation drone probably is what you want up there. The disgusting, vile thing that is the Trade Federation drone.
There you go.
Also, the stupid friggin' Discord missiles. Yuck.
Yeah, I don't know why it's not flipping for me.
So, well, Chris is going to talk about it anyways, but either way, it's the CIS that it does allow you to run in the same point spread that we are just talking about. Like you can only run 4 of one ship, or maybe like 4 or 5 of this other ship. CIS is allowing you to carry 8 Trade Federation drones, and with that, you can still cover. You're saying you can actually put 3 Discords and other things on there, Chris?
Oh yeah, ask Charles. I ran that against him. I have a list of you can run 8 trade. So Trade Federation drone are 19 points. So times 8 are 152 points. So you come in at 152 points only. So if you
8
take
ships.
200 and divide it by 19, which is them naked, you can actually run 10 with upgrades. So pretty amazing.
With
if I don't say so
upgrades.
myself. And I think we should try that sometime. Let Chris run 10 of these against one of you
Yeah,
guys'
I don't think
ships.
so.
No, I'm
I'm
down.
pretty sure
I'm
that's
down.
game breaking.
No, I'm down. Bring it, and I'll bring Bosk.
Okay.
Because Bosk tore through your 8.
Yeah, only one time. The other time I took you down. So, I mean, we could talk about both sides of it, Charles. Let's at least be honest and be fair. We're
run double
1 and
Bosk.
1 with that.
If you're gonna run 10 ships, why not do double party buses? I'm just saying.
No.
I could run triple party buses. I can fit 3 of them.
Chris.
I could fit 3 in.
All right.
Can you
I
really
don't know
fit 3
why.
party buses in one group? Oh,
Oh.
ridiculous.
I don't know why it's not coming up. Now it's pissing me off.
All right. Well, either way, guys, what he's trying to say is you can run 8 Trade Federation drones, 3 Discord missiles, 2 thread tracers, and 3 energy shells, and you still get a bid. Can you believe that? All that stuff listed, and you still get a bid. That is just straight up disgusting.
So I can run the list I ran against Charles had 4 energy shells, 3 Discords, and I had struts on all of them but 2.
That's crazy.
And so when we talk about, the points value, because they are so cheap, now the difference between them is they pop in a different manner, right? So, but on the opposite side, a Discord missile shoots before the ship shoots. So all I got to do is take a calculate token. I can shoot it before. So at the start of engagement, I get to shoot something at range 3 bank, 3 straight, or 3 bank right. All it costs me is one token and 1 energy. Now I can never recover the energy, thank God, because otherwise that would be extremely broken if you could ever recover Discord
More
missile.
broken than it currently is.
It is not broken at all. Hence why it's not top meta. So it's not top meta. If it's top meta, then we'd have a different discussion. So
it's not top meta because people don't want to set 8 dials. That's all I'm saying. I'm gonna stick.
I disagree with you 100%.
I'm sticking with that one.
All right. So you want to put your money where your mouth is? I will hire a top tier player to run 8 of these things and see if he could take down a GSP tournament. And if he gets number 1, I'll pay out the bet to the player. If I'm wrong, or if you're wrong, you're paying the bet out though.
Yeah,
I bet $100 would cover that.
On table would be even worse. Like that's the thing. The calculation is trying to move that many ships is just not ideal.
And I would disagree with you. Like I enjoy that personally. I find it fun. I would do it. So, I'm actually thinking about bringing that list to LVO this year.
Here's a factor that swarms take into effect that no one's talking about, and that's fine. We don't have to. Yes, because of the amount of time that it takes to set, plan, and move 8 ships, there are far less actual shooting rounds versus 8 ships than there are when it's 3-on-3 or 4-on-2 or 4-on-4. When you throw 8 ships into the mix, the amount of time that it takes to move, position, action, shoot, defend, like all of that takes up so much time that you're getting maybe 3, possibly 4 shooting rounds in an hour and 15 minutes.
And what is it that you need to take down a swarm?
You need
time
to drop it. You need to drop a ship every round
right.
at
You
at
have to have
minimum.
Yep, and you have to have time and rounds to play. So I know that you're a swarm player, and I'm not saying that swarms are unbeatable. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm trying to say is they do have other things that they add to the meta that is not necessarily the same thing. If you can have a really good crackerjack start, it is incredibly hard, even if the other player plays much better than you, to get beat if you, I wouldn't even say slow play, just casual play it. It gives them much less time, and especially if you start bumping those bad boys. Is to calculate all those bumps on table, boy.
All right, so we're gonna stop for one. We're gonna stop for a second because we're gonna get into this now. So this is what people pay for. This is what people listen to. We're gonna get into this because I think this comes down to a skill set thing. And this you can say the same thing about Torkoal Mux to me, and that's probably fair because I don't know how to play against Torkoal Mux very well. I lose almost every game. Actually, I think I have lost every game to Torkoal Mux except for one. One time I beat Charles's ass, and not with a swarm. So you complain about, hey, it's going to take longer to set dials. It's going to do all these other things. It's going to extend this so we can shoot less. They're also worth less points. You're worth more points. You can outmaneuver them. They have 3 hull. They have 0 shields. They get a calculate. They can only change 1 dice. If they shoot a Discord missile, they have to get rid of their modifier. Period. No
They don't.
questions asked. They no longer have a modifier. Yes, can
Network
they use their...
calculations.
Okay, so what? So I have 8 ships. 8 ships. Just listen. I have 8 ships, and this is where we get into the points cost. I would argue if Discord missiles were 1 point and drones were 15 points, sure, okay, I could tell you maybe I felt it is broken. But for somebody that's going to shoot a Discord missile at you, you get 1 turn with it. You can destroy it. You can choose to destroy it. I'm getting rid of my mod. So if I have 8 ships, 3 ships will have no mods. 3 ships. You can only take 1 mod from another ship. So if I roll 2 dice, just listen. Let me go. We're gonna go through this. If I roll 2 dice, if I don't roll and hit eyeball, I can't use the other one. If I roll 2 eyeballs, I get 1 hit. The probability of reducing that hit, unless you're a 1 point or a 1 agility ship, is very high. It's over 50%. Over 50%. So what it comes down into is understanding a play style that is different. And this is when we talk about different mechanics of the game. And that's where points do come into it. I don't think droids are actually overpriced in any way, shape, or form. I
So
actually
I'm gonna call your bluff. I'm going to call your bluff because you're ignoring one very large mathematical fact, and that's game theory. And game theory states that every successful hit dramatically increases the likelihood that the next one will be a miss, and that it applies inversely. So every successful miss dramatically increases the mathematics of your hit. If I'm taking 3 shots at 8 ships and you're taking 8 shots at 3 ships, yes, I might shake 1 or 2. But my dice are eventually the variance, the mathematics of it. When you're rolling 8 versus 3, the mathematics of it will catch up.
Okay, so fuck it, we're gonna stop right there. Stop right there. I got 4 ships range 1 to Bosk with Zam on it. That's 2 shots. No questions asked. Zam's gonna have 2 shots, or he's gonna have a modified shot the next round, right? Bosk can churn 1 crit into 2 hits. So I have 4 dice that I can get 5 hits out of. 4 dice I can get 5 hits out of each time. You wipe 2 ships off the board, no questions asked. I don't even get to shoot you. Now I'm down to 6
charge
shots.
coming
shoot
back.
the same round. You can only do that every other round. First. And we just talked about it. You're 4, maybe 6 rounds, right? And that's not even Charles and I like making it up. That's true. That is just true. In TTS, you get a few less. On table, it's many less. It is calculably less. You can watch it. People do not even take them because it is grueling to set and move that many dials. I'm not saying that you couldn't do it in real life. You're a very capable player. You're very good at it. You can probably do all that stuff. But the thing is thinking through and setting through 8 dials takes some time. Moving 8 ships on the board takes some time. Having to do all that stuff takes time. yeah, Bosk is great, can double tap. Sure. Right? He's going to not double tap the first shooting round, but he will double tap the second shooting round. So
Well, he
what?
will
He's
if you have
just
certain
taken off
ships.
what, 3
So
ships?
he,
Maybe?
he will if you do certain ones. Yeah. So if I can get all 8 ships on Bosk, I would have to take Bosk out. That's 2 hits. Bosk would have to roll all blanks 2 times. That you would have to take 0 ships out. That's 16 points. That's 16
So
hits.
you're counting
16.
range 1 from Bosk, and then range
So,
not
hold
1
on.
from every drone.
So
So
hold on. I've got the math. I've got the math.
there you go.
2 red dice with a calculate
Yep.
versus 1 green dice.
Mm-hmm.
Because Bosk only gets to mod 1 green dice.
1.
So you're throwing 2 red dice against 1 green. Your average damage
1.3, 1.4.
1.08 with a 21% chance of at least 1 crit. So that means every 5th roll, so at least 1 out of your 8, mathematically speaking, I'm just talking mathematical statistics. 1 in your 5 shots is going to have or 1 in your 8 shots will have a crit and an average of 1 damage through per shot. Bosk has 12 health. 12 health. You have burned him to half in 1
round.
And in return, I maybe, because if we look at how many green dice do they have?
2.
So 3 red, and we'll say that I
It's
planned
4
ahead
red
and
if
I
I'm
took
at-
a focus. No, I'm counting range 2. I'm not counting additional dice. I'm counting range 2. 3 dice on 2 with a focus. So 1 shot, I'm averaging 1.5. I would like to point out that your 2 dice against 1 is 1.08. So they are almost statistically
It's
equal.
1.
I have a 0.5% chance to deal 1 more damage with my 1 shot.
Right.
Versus 2 green dice. Now, if we do increase that to range 1,
Bosk does
stop.
add a damage.
Stop
Let's
a
be
second.
fair.
No,
He does
no.
add a damage.
Stop. So we're gonna stop for 1 second. Because what you're doing is you're creating an illusion. Is Bosk your whole list?
No.
Is Bosk a whole list?
Of course not.
no.
Okay, so then stop talking like it is. Create the for the price value of what you're getting. That's how many drones you get. That's what you could talk about. So I don't want to hear about Bosk being burned down in 2 churns against an 8-ship list when you still have Bosk is 60 points. You have 140 points. How many M3As you could put in there? Everybody bare naked. You could put, I believe, 5 M3As.
All I was doing was arguing the point that you made, that Bosk against droids, Bosk is going to kill 2 droids immediately, and that levels out when you put Bosk with his ability of crit to hit versus droids.
Yes,
I completely will agree with you that when you take a droid swarm against another list, can it balance? Absolutely. But I'm saying that a droid swarm against 1 ship, if you focus fire 1 ship, you're going to wipe something off the board.
Good. And the rest of your ships will take every one of those droids out. So fine. You want to talk about some goddamn semantics? Because that's what this is, Charles, is semantics. What you're doing is doing semantics. So maybe stop. Maybe I misspoke. Fine. But I'm telling you, the idea behind here is that anybody that wants to sit here, so first off, the meta actually will tell you it is not, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Even with your statistics, it doesn't work because you're not including all the statistics. And that's the huge difference. There is calculations, and we can go to the calculations page and look at it. But you cannot sit there and say 1 ship is going to be there. So sure, could I burn him down in 2 churns, maybe 3 at that, and lose less than 50% of my ships? Sure. But that would say he's got nobody else coming in after him. Nobody else. I could tell you right now that Sasha Wagner's list would burn a droid swarm down rather quickly. It will not hold up to a droid swarm, no matter which way you look at it. And that's him using overpowered shots against stupid 2 dice, 3 hull ships. And
Again,
so
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not saying that a droid swarm is unbeatable. At no point did the only swarm that I would say was unbeatable, and even then it wasn't unbeatable, it was just very unlikely, would be the Nantex bull that we talked about earlier in the podcast. That was the only swarm that I was convinced was unbeatable because of the brokenness of the mechanics. I'm not saying a droid swarm is unbeatable. I've beaten a droid swarm with crap lists. I've beaten a droid swarm with Sasha Wagner's list. I've lost to a droid swarm with really good lists. It depends a lot on dice variance. It depends a lot on different things. What I'm saying is, all that I was saying is that when you fly 8 ships, mathematically speaking, it takes more time to move and plan, so you have less opportunity to shoot at them. I'm not saying it's unbeatable. I'm at no point have I ever said that CIS is broken. I don't think it is. I think that it flies exactly the way it was designed. You have droids that are mass produced. Canonically speaking, I think that it flies perfectly the way it's supposed to. They overwhelm. It's no different than the Empire. You have what? We need shields on the ties? No, I can build 3 ties for the amount of money that you're putting shields on them. So forget the shields and let's just build more ties. It's the same mentality that CIS had with droids. I'm not saying they're unbeatable in any way, shape, or form. I'm just saying that 10 shots or 8 shots per round is better than 4, even if it's 2 dice.
mathematically, it is not. Not when you take into all the other modifiers. That's the difference. So the difference becomes is all the other techniques, and hence that goes back to the points discussion that we have. And so the only reason to bring up 8 ships taking forever to shoot and move and do all these other things is because it implies that your list loses so much more to that list. And I disagree with that wholeheartedly. And that's fine. We could table it. We can agree to disagree. I wholeheartedly disagree with that though, personally. I understand the logic in it. And you could do things, there's things you can do to fix that too. There's lots of things you can do to fix that. There is ways to change those mechanics if that's what you want. If that was that broken of a mechanic. So when we see droid swarms taking forever and net pointing, you know, all of this, then okay, then I'll go back. But we don't see that happening. That is not what the statistics show. And when you do put them together against a lot of other things, the idea is this game would be stupid if we only pointed and shot. At least for me,
Absolutely.
it would be. I would
Absolutely.
I would never play this game ever if it was a point and shoot game. It'd be
Agreed.
stupid.
I don't disagree with you on any level. I agree wholeheartedly.
Okay. So then it comes back to understanding the difference of where the points value come into play. Because I can tell you right now, if you up the points to the point where I couldn't have 8 droids with upgrades, they would immediately leave play. You would not run them. And then at that point, what's the point of having that ship then? And I could say the same thing in Scum. There is definitely Scum ships that you cannot run because they are pointless. They are overcosted. They have way too many issues that you would be like, oh, and who's the one you always complain about, Charles? That you believe is overcosted.
Guri?
Guri. Who's the other one? Moral Evol. I'll just say it for you.
Yeah,
Moral
there you
Evol.
go. Meh.
Moral Evol is to some
I
extent.
don't understand why he's more expensive than Bosk. I don't get it because you get to fly off the board twice.
Yep.
No dice, no innate dice mods. I'll take Bosk every day. I don't need to fly off the edge of the board.
Exactly. And that's the thing is, like, I understand why they have to cost them, because that mechanic, that specific mechanic, you can what they do is if they can't figure something out, they overcost it. That's what they do. That way it just doesn't break, you know. So when droids become to that point where it is, then they do. They raise droid point costs by 1 for every ship. They created independent calculates that say if you want this fancy upgrade, you're going to take 4 points per ship. You know, they do those things. So when it comes to a points relation and understanding why I can run 8 of those damn things, but I can't run 8 tubs, is huge. 8 tubs gets the network calculate and 2 more hull. And they have upgrade slots that are insane. I could take missiles that are different. I can take torpedoes. I could take payloads. I can do all sorts of other things. Hence, they're costed more. And that's, I think, the big difference is why I'm going to say CIS does not cheat. It is not a broken mechanic. And even if you get less turns on the board, does it create a negative play experience? I don't know, because I would tell you Torkoal Mux creates a negative play experience. Running against a Bosk, in my opinion, creates a negative play experience. But that's just me. You can roll 4 dice with 1 crit that you could change to 5 hits. What ship rolls 5 green dice? Well, none. So any ship that Bosk gets at a 180 arc is pretty much range 1 is pretty much, if they don't have shields or that or roll evades, they're a dead ship. No questions asked.
I would like to speak to one thing that I had said earlier. I did find a calculator online that allowed me to take everything into account except for Bosk's ability, because Bosk's ability has no effect on dice probability. All it does is it changes that focus, or it changes that crit to 2 hits. But for pure dice mechanics alone, 4 attacks on my end, right? I took into account a range 1 shot with Bosk, a range 2 shot with a Fang, a range 2 shot with an M3A, and a range 2 shot with a shuttle against 2 evade dice with a calculate. So the average damage output for that round for my shots against a ship with 2 dice and a calculate is 4.5 damage. So between 4 and 5 damage. So on that, yes, I'm killing one droid. I assume they have 3, right?
Yep.
Yep. So I'm killing 1, maybe 2 if I get lucky and get the high side of that variance. Looking at the other end, which is 8 range 2 shots. I didn't even take range 1. I took 8 range 2 shots against 1 green die with a focus. Your average is 8 damage. It's
So you have to take 2 of those out.
7.8.
You have to at least take 1 of those ships out. Period.
Oh, fair enough, because I would have killed that. Yep. So
you would have killed 1 at minimum, and you can't guarantee they're going to all have those tokens either.
Fair
because
enough.
of that.
But
So
I
that's
just
the
to keep. I can't guarantee that I'm going to have a focus for all 8 of your shots.
nope,
Or all
you're
7
right.
of your shots. So but even then, if I take 1 ship out, it drops you from an average of 7.8 damage to an average of 6.7 damage. Again, you're not that much stronger in your droid. I'm adding to your statement. I'm not saying that I was right. I'm saying that when we compare the 4 shots to the 6, we're comparing 5 damage versus 7 damage. Now, here is where the game mechanics shift, and they play into play styles. Is yes, your ships only have 3, so my 4 or 5 damage is going to kill one and cripple one other, where your 6 to 7 damage may not all be on one ship, right? That could be spread. You could have done 3 to Bosk, 2 to the Fang, 1 to the shuttle, and 0 to the M3A. So your damage is now spread because of the way your ships were facing or how we engaged. Like you said, it's not a point and shoot game. It's not a point and click game. There's a lot. X-Wing is a game of positioning, right? That's the joke line that everybody likes to say. But I'm strengthening your argument in saying that there are a lot of variables and a lot of counter activity that can be played against a droid swarm that make it not broken.
Yep.
Does it
okay,
still
fine. I agree with that.
hurt? Does it still hurt to play against one? Abso-freaking-lutely. It is not fun on the most part, but for me, I don't care if you play a droid swarm, because for me, I have good conversations. I have fun jokes. Even when I lose, I just get blown out because I can't roll a green dice to save my life because of the Charles effect. I'm fine with it, because every player that I've played against in this community, with the exception of a very select few, every player is an enjoyable experience regardless of the list. Every player understands dice variance. Every player gets tilted every once in a while, but can laugh through it and have a good time. And that's one of the reasons why I keep coming back to this game, and why no matter how many times I go into a tournament and go 2-4 or 3-3 and I don't make cut, I still bring my stupid jank list to the next tournament and try to my jank lists because I'm having a good time.
Yeah. And I think that's, and again, so I agree with you. And that's the thing, is that's the variability, and that's where the points come in. Hence why, if you added 2 more drones to that mix, you changed the whole dynamic, right? Because of the points. If I can have 10 droids at that point level, it changes everything. That changes so much. It's not even funny. All right. With that being said, why don't we move on to our system malfunction? Sound good? All right. For system malfunction tonight, we're going to see, can we get it to bring up? Let's see. Are we going to get lucky? Oh, looks like we're going to get lucky. All right. So the first list I wanted to highlight in an effort to talk about our points discussion, right? Oh, hey, there. Hey, TTT now's coming through. Look at that. Good God. All right. In an effort to discuss our points discussion with it, I wanted to bring up a couple of different lists, right? So one of the lists that I wanted to bring up was Ray, because I think Ray is not a huge meta staple. She is kind of a fringe discussion, right? Like people do use Ray, they do have different interactions with Ray, but I think in the long run, she is a very good centerpiece that sometimes is overlooked. And the idea here is to look at weird interactions that you don't know about. So what Ray says, and we'll bring Ray up here, while you defend or perform an attack in your front arc, so even though you have a pivotal arc, it has to be facing forward. If the enemy ship is in there, you may spend one force to change one of your blank results to an evade or to a hit. That's pretty good, right? I think it is. I don't know. Nobody else is commenting. I think that's pretty good. So then you have a couple of other pieces where you have Rose Tico, right? And you have Finn. So Finn allows you to do different weird things. Rose Tico says while you defend or perform an attack, you may spend one of your results to acquire a lock on that ship. So the way the triggering works is essentially if I'm rolling up with Ray, I have 3 red dice. I rolled 2 blanks. Ray could spend a force to change one of those blanks to a hit. Or she could just say, well, screw it. I'm going to take Rose Tico, throw her a target lock token, get rid of one of my dice. Could do that. No big deal. Then you add Finn in. And Finn says, while you're performing a front attack, you can add a blank result. So because of how they trigger, Finn's going to let you do that blank result before Rose Tico does. Finn also triggers with Ray. So if I roll 3 hits, and then Finn adds a blank dice, what is Ray get to do? She gets to spend one of her 2 forces on changing that blank to a hit. It works insanely well when Ray works. And I don't know, Matt, I think you've played this before on more than one occasion.
Yeah, it's ray gun. Very, very powerful. Death ray, I think they also call it.
Yep.
Very, what do you call it? Consistent damage.
Yeah.
Yes, very consistent. Especially if you can keep it in the front arc. If you can't keep it in the front arc, it tends to die off a little bit. But that's just like the Shadowcaster. Who is it? My brain is fried. What is her name?
Massage?
No, the other one. Ketsu.
Ketsu, yeah.
Throwing Ketsu, if you can joust with her, being able to put 2 tractors per turn on different ships and, bouncing that damage around. If you can joust those large ships and move them slow enough to be able to joust them, they just get dumb.
Yeah. Finn also lets you do this on defense.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Blech.
So Ray essentially has 1 green dice with a blank. And guess what Ray does? Changes a blank to an evade. So it's, again, a free evade.
Yeah, and then when you get into the crabbiness of adding Amelin Holdo and being able to switch the the stealth device onto Ray and doing all of that nonsense, It's nuts.
And yeah, and that's even crazier. That's a crazy list. Now, I put Corcel on here because essentially after you execute a blue maneuver, you can get rid of every stress token. And I have raised Millennial Falcon on here, which basically says even if you have less than 2 stress, you can perform any stressful maneuver that ship has. So you can perform a stressful maneuver. If you don't have any other stress, you can perform it. If you have 2 stress or 1 stress, I'm sorry, you can perform it. So you could perform Sergei's loop twice in 2 turns. And then Corcella says all you got to do is do a blue maneuver next turn. So if Bray wants to stay in front of somebody that is trying to outmaneuver her, she's able to stay in front of them. All right. What was the next one that I had? I don't remember anymore. Was it a
Nora
Republic
Wexley.
list? No, it was a Rebel list. That's right.
Nora in the arc with veteran tail gunner and Zeb.
Yeah. So Nora, what Nora says, so for the first thing is Nora's in initiative 5. So typically she's moving closer to last. She has 3 attack dice out the front, 2 out the back. She says, while you defend, if there is an enemy ship at range 0 to 1, you get to immediately add 1 evade result to your dice. So essentially, you get 2 evades if you can roll an evade every turn. The other thing that she says, if you add Zeb to her, you can perform primary attacks at range 0. Now, that also lets the enemy perform them at range 0 against you too. So you going into bump does mean they're going to be able to shoot you back. But Matt can attest to this, that Nora with Zeb on it is pretty bloody good. It's a very fun ship to run. I think Matt's ran that ship against me, I don't know, more than one time. And I will say I do love that ship, like in that aspect. Then you put, and this is the one that Matt added, the veteran tail gunner. You can now perform 2 attacks. So you bump, you can still shoot out your front, and then after you're done, you get to shoot out the back if there's an enemy ship in there. So you can literally ram her into everybody. You do lose your action, but you can ram her into everybody and still get 2 shots. So if you're smart, you take the target locks ahead of time, a target lock ahead of time, you can do that. Now, think about this. You can also add this, is it the R2 or the R3?
Auto crit.
Nope. I want the one that gives you 2 target locks, the R3.
Okay.
So think of it this way. If you know a ship's going to go behind you, or you know there's going to be something where they have to be, you could take 2 target locks ahead of time, ram yourself in there. Now you got free modifiers. You don't even have to worry about your focus. Then on top of that, add intimidation in. And while you're at range, while an enemy is at range 0, it rolls 1 fewer defense dice. And all of that comes in for 66 points.
All of that comes in for 2 points less than Fenrir.
Yeah. So there you go. Let's go around. Is that fair? Do you think that is fairly costed compared to Fenrir?
Yes.
Yep.
And why is that?
Because the arc is a brick and it doesn't dodge anything. So yeah, it's great, but you're gonna get lit up like a Christmas tree. All of that, you just put a big old target right on the back of that arc, and it is not good at defending itself. Fen, on the other hand, has the offensive output. He also has the defensive output. As a joke, should this be less than a naked ship? Probably not. But for the sake of gameplay, is it balanced? Yeah, because I'd probably take Fen against that and outmaneuver you around your side arc so you don't get a shot and launch 5 dice into your side.
All right.
And this is coming as someone who is a diehard Fenrir supporter, to say that that is equally or fairly costed compared to what is probably my favorite ship in the game next to Guri. That says a lot.
All right. The last list that I kind of brought up that I thought was kind of a weird, fun type thing to run is this. And this is going to be very hard to pull off, and I don't care what anybody says. I can't imagine being able to pull this off very often. But what I have on here is 2 Geonosian prototype HMP droid ships, and what they say is while you perform a missile or cannon attack, you may remove 1 tractor token from the defender to re-roll up to 2 attack dice. So with an HMP, if they target lock you, they get to re-roll 1 per ship that's target locked. If they have a tractor token, they can re-roll up to 2, but they have to remove it. So if it's a lower initiative ship, it's going to be worse, but it's probably a higher initiative ship anyway. So you're basically essentially giving it back to them to get a free reroll. It's like a target lock. Then what you do is you take SureTech with Ensnare, which is very high points, but you take SureTech with Ensnare, and while you perform a primary attack, if the defender is tractored, you may reroll up to 2 attack dice. So SureTech is a 4. He's already going to be shooting at a ship that gets 1 less green dice because of the tractor. With Ensnare says at the end of activation, if you are tractored, you may choose one ship in the range of your arc at 0 to 1 and transfer that tractor token. Gorgle says the same thing. So then think about it this way. You put Gorgle and SureTech in the same list, they're dumping 2 tractor tokens. Essentially, your Geonosian prototypes can take calculate tokens and always have the Ensnare tractor tokens from the Geonosians, or I'm sorry, from the Nantex for rerolls. So it's better than the target locks. You don't have to run the 5-point tactical, or I'm sorry, not the relay, the 5-point droid probes, and you essentially are getting almost the exact same thing every single round. Anybody have any thoughts on this list?
Don't ever run it.
Don't ever run it.
Sounds good.
It sounds like a negative play experience to me. But
I wouldn't go that far.
It, so yeah.
I wouldn't go that far. Yes, being able to throw your tractors out there is fine, but for instance, if I fly a fire spray or I bring, since he seems to be the topic of discussion right now, Boskin in the YV666, your tractor beams mean nothing unless you can fit 3 of them in there. So I pop your Nantex. It's not unbeatable. There are checks and balances. There are rocks to paper to scissors in this game. So you know what I mean? Yeah, is it strong? Absolutely. But is it unbeatable? No. Where I would screw up if I flew against this is my brain works very much in I fly like this. So if I keep moving forward, eventually I fly into the face of one of your ships. Whereas the HMP says, I'm going to go here and then I'm going to go here. And that's where it messes with me, is I don't process that side slip that they do very well. And it tends to mess with my planning pretty hardcore.
And I would agree with that, especially because it's a new maneuver. And I would almost argue that we could have a discussion about whether, like a whole episode on whether those repulsatory lists are undercosted, because they probably are based on the newness of it. Maybe in a year, I would disagree with that. But because it's so hard to understand their maneuverability and all that, and I get the whole, like, GSP does the whole lean back thing. But I'll tell you what, even as a playing those ships, it is very hard to 100% always plan where they're going to be, and they create a higher variability. So they're like an ace, but they're at 44 points. And how many aces do you run at 44 points?
82s. Maybe.
82s. Which 82s 44 points? I didn't know that.
Shakti's? I don't know.
Is Shakti 44 points? All right. So one who has a 10th of the health. So they are probably a little bit, at least at this point in the meta, they are probably a little bit overcosted or undercosted for what they actually do.
Shakti is 44.
Yeah. So, but Shakti also only has 3 health. So HMPs have a lot more than 3 health.
Mm-hmm.
You are not wrong, sir.
Yeah. And hence why, at least in my opinion, in this meta, until people understand how they move, because they are unique, I really do think those points are pretty undercosted in CIS right now.
I think the closest thing that I can get to them consistency is Star Vipers, which are nowhere near the meta, and they don't even. But they don't do the weird part is that this is where the shift happens. I can do Star Vipers with the bendy barrel roll somewhat because it's an arc. It's not a full turn. It's not like a Talon roll built in. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
that's what a side slip essentially is. It's a Talon roll without the 90-degree turn. But it gives you the 90-degree turn because you're coming out the side into the side. But or is it Echo? Echo's the phantom that decloaks on the bank at the 2, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So those are the closest things in game that we've had to the side slip, and the side slip is just crazy powerful because it doesn't it doesn't go that forward motion. It is like a stop and sliding to the side, and that's what makes that difficult because even the bendy barrel roll still comes with some sort of forward trajectory. Whether you do it before or after a maneuver, you're still following the natural order of that trajectory versus like a hover motion like a drone would do.
Yep. And I can do that weird sideways move and take a calculate token or a target lock every turn.
Yeah.
The Star Viper cannot do that, even with
No.
advanced sensors.
No, you are correct. Well,
Yeah.
Guri could. Guri could.
Okay, everybody but Guri. But Guri is worth more than 44 points. I'll tell you that right now.
Every Star Viper is worth more than 44 points.
Yeah. All right. What are we at? I think we're at 2 hours. Anybody have anything else that we want to cover?
I think we're good.
All right. Well, cool. Well, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We've had an amazing night on Planning Phase Syndicate. Thank you all. We will be back next week with another episode 10, talking, I don't know what we're talking about, actually. I don't know if we plan the episode or not. So I think we're talking about Swarms. Oh, we get to go back into Swarms again? Oh, that'll be a fun discussion.
We'll
Oh,
keep
man.
that
Hopefully
one.
one of you are leading
Scripted.
it. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. If you have not, please head over to our Podbean, subscribe on Apple, subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Twitch, whatever floats your boat, to get notifications every time we are live. We are live every Sunday, 9 p.m. Eastern, and we will be back next week with more XTC games. Thank you all, and have an amazing night.